I know that you're tired, dude. What time did you go to bed last night?
I really didn't because my kids go to school. So, like, I was waiting because we were expecting Wayne County to give that last vote dump. And then I thought we could call Michigan and just get this done and wrap this thing up. It wasn't coming, making calls, like, well, trying to figure out when it was going to come. It didn't. About 85% of it is done, and then maybe even 90 by now. But that was like 4:30 in the morning.
You've been doing this for a long time. Like, it's not vindication in an egotistical way. This is your livelihood. This is your expertise. This is your field. When you are fighting people who are so wildly wrong, seemingly, and then you get vindicated, I mean, you got to tell me, like, you were spot on. How good does it feel?
This one probably feels the best. I remember 16 like it was yesterday because I was not new, but I was new to most of the public. And I felt like it was a closer election, that I was right, but you're going up against the grain. And I'll never forget that feeling. Last night was something else. It was different. It was well beyond, above and beyond that. This is what I told people going into the election. In 2016, it looked close, but there was always a chunk of voters that were pretty much fed up with the status quo. They didn't want another Clinton, another Bush, or whatever. And all Trump had to do was meet what we call the presidential bar. Like, they convinced voters that they can do this job. And once he did, those voters broke for him. I don't know what other pollsters were doing. I don't know what they were seeing, but I thought it was pretty clear. In 2020, it was hard to find his support. COVID was messing up their panels. It was messing up response bias. It was a difficult environment, and you had to go search for the guy's support. This year was not like that. And I'm wondering what on earth all of these other people are doing. How many times we had Barnes on and what are the odds? I mean, Barnes knows how I do this over these years. We put it up. Dave, people can see the results live on what are the odds as they're coming in. This was not an election where it was like, okay, is Donald Trump going to do better with these groups than he has in the past? The question was, how much better is he going to do? And I'm fighting against the narrative from these people. It's just like complete propaganda. And that is not supposed to be a part of this industry. Donald Trump won white suburban women last night. I mean, this is like something that should stun you, given everything you heard running up to the election. Well, he won suburban women.
The reason why it doesn't stun me is because I thoroughly regard all pollsters whom I don't trust as propagandists who are creating a narrative and not reflecting one. I know what they can do to tinker with to get the results that they want, to convince white suburban women that other white suburban women are not supporting Trump. And so I've known this for a little bit of time, even from the practice of law. Other people still trust the pollster stuff. I don't want to name other people. How do you assure other people that your methodology is accurately reflecting the sentiment of white suburban women?
I think that we can all go on and talk about the details of our methodology, and I'd like to, because I'm a nerd and I really think it's important to talk about it. But I think at the end of the day, the pollster's track record is going to speak for itself, right? So if you're wrong consistently year over year, and this is a great way to segue into actual methodology, but like Marist, for instance, and I'm going to name drop here because this has got to stop. I mean, embarrassment is the only way we can move forward here. Marist poll made fun of people like them and their industry, made fun of others like me, Robert Cahaley at Trafalgar, a few of us who have done a better job in presidential cycles in recent years, for using different modes of collection to reach these women and others and give them anonymity to make sure that they understand. Like, if I showed you our questionnaires and how our agents interview people and ourselves, and I still, by the way, conduct them myself because I want to keep my ear to the ground. I personally want to involve myself. So I'm just not looking at the data that other people are collecting. I want to talk to the American public. And that's a big difference. I don't think any other pollster does that. I still do. They were making fun of these different methods that we have been pioneering over the years. And then all of a sudden this year, Dave, they all, Marist and a bunch of them, jump into the fold and decide that they're going to try to use these methods that they had been criticizing as illegitimate, as not the gold standard, not high quality. They're going to do it. And they had no experience. So, for instance, Marist sends out their Sun Belt polls, which they did Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina. And two people, one a follower of mine, I know, get the poll, take the poll, send it to me. And they're like, hey, is this supposed to happen? They didn't even block survey forwarding. Survey forwarding is when you text somebody a link to take a survey, which is a great way to reach suburban women and they will give you their more honest opinion when you're not on the phone talking to them and they think that there's a right answer they're supposed to give. That's number one. When you do that, you cannot make it so somebody's getting that survey can then take it and forward it over to you. So let's say I get it. I take it and I say, well, Dave agrees with me. I bet you Dave is going to choose Trump on this. So let's manipulate this poll. I'm going to text it to Dave. So I text it to you. Then you can click on it and you can take the poll. Well, first of all, randomness is gone. Randomization's gone. At that point, you've perverted it. It's been tainted, but also it'll be tainted by the bias of the people in their social circles that they're sending it out to. I told Real Clear Politics, they're not even doing this right. They jumped into this new method and they don't even know how to correctly block survey forwarding. There's multiple ways to do it. One is blocking by cookies, another one by IP, and then you should always assign a unique ID to that URL. They don't know this.
So this is basically like, it's like it's a chain letter of sorts that they among ideologically aligned individuals more often than not, from which they then derive their statistics for the purposes of polling.
And that maybe wasn't their intent, but because they actually don't know what they're doing with these new methods that for years they made fun of. All right, this is what's important. For years, people like me were trying to pioneer new data collection modes that take out some of the social desirability bias. I mean, social desirability is really a form of response bias. There's a lot of different kinds of response biases. They're driven by different things. But social bias is a major problem in this country right now when it comes to polls. And this time, too, there was something else. And I haven't gotten a chance to talk enough about this. But in 16 and in 20, there was a true social bias with people not wanting to say they were for Trump if they were for Trump. And it was like, I'm not going to get invited to the Tupperware party. You know, I think the pollster might look down on me. This was different. How on earth, if you're trying to imprison the nominee of the Republican Party and the major, one of the two major parties, you want him to spend the rest of his life in jail. If you're putting his supporters in jail, how on earth could we not expect that voters out there were going to be less than, a little bit more than timid, a little less than forthcoming with the truth and the answer, that you want them to give. You want them to be honest, but they were afraid. We constantly heard people on the phone saying, look, can you call back in 10 minutes? I just want to research you. Hey, do I go on a list? Am I going to be put on a list somewhere? We have to prompt them at this point and say, look, your answers, all your participation is voluntary. You don't have to do it, but it's vital that you do. But also remember that your responses are all confidential and anonymous. We will not tell anybody who you are. Like, that is what we have to tell these people. It's unbelievable. Americans were afraid. They didn't want to say they were for Donald Trump because maybe the FBI is listening. I mean, the stuff we heard is stuff you would never hear as a pollster ever before this election. And we heard it all through this cycle.